In the last financial year alone, more than 120,000 migrants arrived wanting to call Australia home. The Minister for Immigration, Jerry Hand, has been travelling around Australia, finding out firsthand what settlement problems migrants experience. Mr Hand was in Newcastle today to open his department's new regional office in Watt Street. But he's using his first visit to explore what the Hunters ethnic groups think about the government's migrant settlement policy. He'll be hearing those views tonight at City Hall.
It's really about trying to get people involved in, a real assessment of the government's policies.
Recent figures show that almost 60% of new arrivals are heading towards Sydney and Melbourne, but the Minister believes the Hunter will continue to attract migrants. The manager of the area's new immigration office, Liliana Velikovic, says the service is much in demand.
Every week we have about 400 people actually turning up at the office. We also have approximately about 400 to 500 phone calls.
Although Ms Velikovic says migrants in this region experience settlement problems, she considers the Hunter to be open-minded.
Well, I think we are tolerant. Newcastle, we've had migrant population here from a number of years ago. I can't see that as a problem, not in this area, not in Newcastle.
During the past 6 months, Newcastle City Council has developed the Hamilton Traffic Scheme from being mere words on paper to paving bricks and mortar. The scheme is intended to cut down traffic flow in residential areas and improve the shopping environment. The scheme's highlights are a new mall in James Street and the elimination of a car crash black spot on the corner of Beaumont and Denison Streets. But while the scheme is designed to improve the quality of life for Hamilton residents, not all of them like the look of the new.
Just sentimental, I think. I worked in the old one, I like the new old one. I don't mind the way the new one is, but there's going to be no parking.
It's too much in and out of all the rubbish and everything, and now you don't know where you are.
But others think the changes are good for helping Hamilton back to life after the earthquake.
It's more convenient, for the people now, so people can get out, easier now, so it's better.
I reckon it's done a lot for it. It's boosted our sort of outlook on it. We were known as the old town sort of thing, and now it's sort of looking a bit more modern.
I think this will be nice, yeah. It was old, and one time Hamilton was a very busy place.
Newcastle City Council's planning engineer, Peter Sylvester, says that under the scheme, no more road closures along Beaumont Street are planned. But Hamilton Chamber of Commerce President Lindsay Parker says there's been rumours of Beaumont Street and even its railway gates being closed. Mr Parker says the rumours are untrue, but they've angered some local retailers.
They are only rumours. They were speculation put up. They were just perhaps one of 100 ideas put around to solve some of our problems. None of the closure ones were ever taken seriously, and the Chamber of Commerce is definitely not in favour of any main closures like that.
The 55 new citizens from 15 nations were presented with certificates marking a fresh start in an adopted land. Their multicultural backgrounds were welcomed, and Minister for Immigration Jerry Hand encouraged them to share their ideas in shaping Australia's future. 16-year-old schoolboy Tai Van Hun, formerly of Vietnam, celebrated his new status. For others, such as Bill Turnbull, who's lived here for the past 31 years as a British citizen, it was a chance to set the record straight.
I think it's only the legal aspect of it that's going to make the change, but after 31 years I do consider myself an Australian. Just made the legal bond, I suppose.
It seems the 3 hours of education now stand for raucous rock and roll. The students from 16 Hunter High Schools spent today polishing their acts for the 1991 Rocker Stedford, and no one seemed to regret trading textbooks for tights. Round 1 begins tonight and it promises to be a spectacular affair. The students are allowed to let their imaginations run wild, and they've come up with some intriguing themes. Waratah High's money routine included some unflattering portrayals of the dreaded tax department and a revealing look at the seedier side of wealth. They weren't the only ones to be a little risque though. Glendale High cut a fine rug and a fine line. Those judged best over the 2 nights of competition will go on to take part in the national event, but everyone involved is sure to remember the time they tripped the light fantastic at the Civic Theatre. Hands up who prefers this to ancient history. Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.
Police say the gunman went into the news agency at about 6:30 a.m, where they held a sawn-off shotgun to the manager's head, forcing him to crawl to a safe and reveal the combination. One of the men was wearing a khaki greatcoat and balaclava, the other isn't described. They both fled on foot with a large quantity of cash, but police are anxious to hear from anyone who may have seen 2 people in a vehicle around the Madawi area early this morning. It's the second hold-up in the shopping centre in a matter of days. Last week, a gunman held up the video shop, also making off with a large quantity of cash. In an unrelated episode near Mayfield, a 19-year-old man has been fined $1,500 with $250 damages after a police pursuit this morning. Police searched the Queensland man's car, confiscating an unlicensed rifle and charging him with drive in a manner dangerous, traffic offences and malicious damage.
Council having input into that or not?
Yes, we do.
When the 2 sections of the guided missile frigate HMAS Newcastle are loaded onto a special barge and shipped to Melbourne for completion, work at Eglo's Kooragang plant will all but cease. The workforce is already down to half that which started work on the project 3 years ago. The latest layoffs coming just last week.
I fear that we may have to go down as far as 50%, possibly even a little more. But I'm also optimistic that once the Anzacs are coming along, that we will increase our labour force to at least of what we were over the last 3 years.
Being related to Amacon, the company which holds the Anzac frigate contract to build 10 ships over the next 10 years, doesn't guarantee Eglo a share of that work.
There are no guarantees in life, but our performance over the last 10, if not 20 years has been such that there must be no doubt that the work will come to Newcastle.
A starting date for the construction of the Anzac frigates has been postponed to late 1992, which means a very lean 18 months for Eglo. The company is banking on winning work from the Tomago aluminium plant expansion, but management has already begun negotiations with trade unions over workforce layoffs. In the meantime, a special heavy lift ship, the Sunrise, is standing by to load the completed frigate sections tomorrow. Elsewhere on the harbour, the Four Jacks floating dock is besieged with industrial strife again. The Painters and Dockers Union is picketing the dock, fighting for the retention of a roster system that management wants to throw out. The placards and pickets went up outside the Four Jacks gate at 12:30 after talks between management and the Painters and Dockers Union broke down. Owner Stephen Forjacks wants to replace the union's roster system with 24 permanent employees. But the union says if the roster goes, so will about 50 jobs. Union Secretary Sam Millen says by throwing out the roster, Forjacks management is reneging on a deal struck last year.
They're not prepared to carry out the agreement. They wish to pick up from the Strait, which is going back years ago, to a bull system. That is the right to select their own labour.
The dispute is listed for hearing in the Industrial Relations Commission on Monday.
Phil and Sue Walker fear it may soon be illegal for them to dig in their garden. Theirs is one of 55 Empire Bay homes thought to be built over ancient Aboriginal sites. If that's proven, National Parks and Wildlife restrictions will apply.
It means we can't put shovel to ground, we can't put a rose garden in. We have to ask for special permission to do extensions from the Wildlife Association.
Residents in the area are outraged. They claim any restrictions will slash the value of their homes and say they wouldn't have bought the land if they'd known.
As far as we knew, the land was free and clear, and we had no notice of any Aboriginal site here at all.
Who's going to buy a block of land where they can't actually do anything on until they get permission? Then it might be refused by the Parks and Wildlife.
What's it going to do to the place? Your value just drops, bingo, down.
But the National Parks people say they didn't know either until the Public Works Department started to install a sewerage system in the area.
We just don't have the capacity to go out there and find all the sites that do exist. So it's quite understandable that this issue has arisen out of the blue because we haven't had the knowledge of the sites there.
A second archaeological report is now being prepared. It will determine exactly how significant the sites are.
The Aboriginal people were here 7,000 years, maybe longer than that, in this area. So in going through a midden, we are getting an important history of how the Aboriginal people lived 7,000 years ago.
Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.
These children are the advance party for a group who'll stay at school until midday tomorrow for a marathon computer-thon.
The reason why we're having our computer-thon is because it's our 100th birthday next year and we're having a sleepover in the hall and we're trying to keep the computers on for 25 hours.
They've been walking the streets and putting the hard word on relatives to sponsor them for each hour the school computers stay on. Several classes have done 1 hour stints in front of the glowing screen. Tonight's group will be in for the long overnight haul. They've also used the computers to print a newspaper, writing many of the articles and ads themselves. Between their paper and the computer-thon, they hope to raise $15,000 for what's destined to be a serious centenary party.
We've invited the Australian Governor-General and the German ambassador and people like that to come and see the school, and there's going to be an official ceremony.
But don't feel too sorry for the kids whose school week won't finish until tomorrow. Most people want to get away from school as fast as they can.
Oh, well, not when it's involved with computers, because computers are fun.
Eglo Engineering won the contract to construct 2 major segments of the frigate, which is the last in a 10-year upgrading of the Navy's fleet. 2 other sections are being constructed in Melbourne, where all the components will eventually be assembled to become the HMAS Newcastle. The only big headache in the whole operation is the delivery of the Newcastle sections. A specially designed ship was contracted to carry the load. Each segment is to be jacked onto a vast dolly of almost 200 wheels to take the short haul from land to the vessel. The task was suitably impressive as a finale to an outstanding technical achievement.
It's basically the culmination of 2.5, nearly 3 years' work, so there's been a lot of effort and a lot of planning into this whole project.
The 650-tonne section is more than a hull. Inside, everything is fitted out except mattresses for the bunks. With cables pulling from the front and 4 trucks pushing from behind, the first section was loaded successfully this afternoon. The second piece will roll on tomorrow, leaving workers at Eglo wondering what the future holds in a depressed shipbuilding industry. At least they have the satisfaction of knowing the Navy holds their workmanship in the highest regard.
I think it's exceptionally good. We're very pleased throughout the project with the standard of work that has been produced by the company here.
The ship is due to take its cargo to Melbourne on Monday. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Wanderers got away to a great start in the first 3 minutes of the match with a fine field goal, and then followed the first of 3 tries. A towering up and under was hoisted by Ben McCulloch, which hung up for ages, and Mayfield East let the ball bounce. Andrew Sargent was waiting in the wings, and he made the most of the fortuitous bounce to snap up the loose ball and score. Wanderers added their second through another Mayfield East error. The East spilt the ball, and live wire half Nick Davies towed the ball forward, gathered and sprinted the few metres to score a good solo try in the corner. With the conversion, Wanderers had skipped away to a 15-point lead, but they hadn't finished in the first half. From the scrum win 20 metres out, Davies ran across field and then straightened, and he was in for his second try of the afternoon, and Wanderers were right on top to celebrate their 67th anniversary.
When shop owner Keith Ferner arrived at work this morning, he discovered he'd been robbed again.
I'm actually a bit resigned to it now, seeing it's happened 4 times in 7 months, but I guess the initial reaction was, oh no, not again. But yeah, it's happened 4 times, so it's half expected now.
The shop, For Your Man, specialises in upmarket gifts for men. The thief gained entry by breaking a window. He stole about $1,500 worth of goods.
Well, he hasn't taken a lot. He's taken some large torches, some leather gear, a few knives and a watch or 2. But considering the amount of stuff that's here, he's been very considerate, if you could call it that.
Police believe the same person may have been responsible for the last 2 robberies. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Troy Trevelyan played his first home game for the Falcons, and he was in the thick of the action right from the outset, and the Falcons looked pretty good. Bobby Locke steadied the Cats before Trevelyan once again took control of proceedings. The pressure was on, and Dozier tried to involve referee John Payne with a super pass. Bullock was in everything and made 2 great stills to help the Falcons to a 7-point lead at half-time. The Falcons extended their lead to 10 midway through the third quarter before Geelong rallied with John Dorge and Terry Dozier making a couple of important baskets, and at the last change it was 95 all. Trevelyan gave the Falcons the lead. And then Shane Hill got hot with 3-pointers from everywhere. Michael Johnson replied to get the Falcons within 3. but Locke tied up the win for the Super Cats. With time running out, Grant Kruger made the tackle of the night. Referee John Payne sent Kruger off, and he will face the NBL judiciary charged with a flagrant foul and unsportsmanlike conduct. The incident was an unfortunate way to end a match that was highly entertaining. The final score, Geelong 130, Newcastle 118.
With just 4 hectares of vineyards, an old winemaking building and barrels of enthusiasm, Brian and Faye McGuigan began Wyndham Estate in 1970. 20 years later, when the Hunter Company was sold for $82 million to the French giant Pernod Ricard, Wyndham Estate had a turnover of $60 million a year and countless wine buffs in 28 countries. But the McGuigans have decided that 18 months after the Pernod takeover, it's time to leave Wyndham.
The time has come now, I think, because the rationalisation of Wyndham and the integration of Wyndham into their organisation has taken place, and I think that now is the time for my wife and myself to look to something else to do.
Mr McGuigan says he's particularly proud of helping to develop Wyndham from a small winery to an Australian leader in the international market.
I think this has created a new scope, a new era, a new dimension for the Hunter Valley wine industry, and there are certainly many Hunter companies now active in export.
Although the McGuigans are leaving Wyndham behind them, their life will remain intertwined with the vine.
You get wine into your veins, and certainly it's my intention to maintain my interest and dedication to this region and the products of the vineyards.
When the McGuigans move out of Wyndham in October, they'll be taking with them some vintage memories.
I'll never forget the experiences and the challenges and the victories that we've had here.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
The NRMA survey is an independent look at road conditions. For the next 6 months, a team of 3 engineers will travel the roads of Lake Macquarie and the Central Coast and study accident statistics to identify local black spots.
Mainly the sort of problems that motorists see on the road system, the sort of difficulty with the pavement condition, the shoulders, the edges, overtaking opportunities in these areas that are growing traffic congestion, and also black spots where we see crashes and dangerous areas on the road system.
Recommendations will be made to the RTA and local councils on both urgent and long-term repairs. A similar NRMA survey 2 years ago identified the Cessnock to Branxton Road and the Nelson Bay stretch as the area's worst routes. Despite this, little work has been done on either. But the NRMA is not perturbed. It says in 90% of the cases, the authorities agree some form of improvement is necessary, but getting the funding is a different story.
The roads in the region are fairly poor. We've seen some improvement, but with the wet weather over the whole of New South Wales the last couple of years, I think all of our roads are very poor. And in the Hunter region just recently, in the wet weather, you see them fall apart, pothole, edges break away, and that's because the pavements are so old. We've really got to have a big injection of funds to bring them up to modern day standards.